Here we go. Hello, and welcome to the My Sugar-Free Journey podcast. We have a very special episode today. We're going to talk to Ron Mirante of Bone In Foods, and Ron is one of these guys that we'd like to talk to from time to time. That's really on the forefront of delivering really good, high-quality, natural food, the way that food is supposed to be raised to consumers. And so we're going to find out a little bit how exactly he does all that and what secrets of his success are. But before we get into that, Ron, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. So let's also for those of you that are listening and not watching, we've got a 2-year-old running around in the background. So that's if you hear some squealing every once in a while, he seems like a very happy 2-year-old, as happy as 2-year-olds can be, this late at night. He may get tired and want to go to bed here in a little bit. But Ron, let's start off with your food journey. Tell us about your past and how you decided to make some changes to your diet.
Sure. Well, obviously growing up as a kid, I'm 37 now. I was raised on the whole modern day food system of Lucky Charms, Pop-Tarts, Hungry Man's, macaroni and cheese. If it was an easy cook for our family, that's usually what made the table.
Big hungry hamburger helper family.
Oh, big. Yeah. And actually, it's actually one of the only foods that I probably miss is the stroganoff hamburger helper meal. My parents also, were the busy modern day family, always trying to find a place for their kids because they were busy working, trying to make ends meet, trying to provide more for the family, offer us things, and obviously it all played a part into food convenience. It was probably around the age of 13 that my mom's health deteriorated. She developed cancer and a 2-year battle, which she didn't survive. Immediately following that, my father turned to alcohol, another conventionally made byproduct that our modern systems just portray as, another option to indulge on. So alcoholism took his life about 10 years later.
Golly. Okay.
So at this point, I'm 24. I have no parents. And I was actually sick quite a few times throughout my life. And at those times, Lyme disease was new, but they had claimed that I had Lyme disease. I have doctors now telling me that it was probably scarlet fever and not Lyme's, based off my current conditions that put me on this food path. And I decided that I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what it was. And I started to question a lot because obviously after going through watching two parents completely deteriorate their health with a modern day food system, you start to question things. And I started doing some volunteer work with some groups abroad, and I took a vaccination and my body just completely failed me.
Really?
No blame to the vaccination. I can't really point fingers at that, but what I do know is that it triggered an autoimmune condition called Still's disease in me, which ended up causing excessive inflammation throughout all my body, and it started to attack my heart. And my heart became severely inflamed. I developed acute pericarditis. And at 30 years old, my wife and I were basically trying to figure out whether or not I should be writing my will or fighting for my life. And doctors threw me on very high dosages of corticosteroids. We saw 7 specialists before one was actually finally able to diagnose me through exemption because of how I responded to treatments. But 80 milligrams of prednisone on a daily basis can start doing its own harm to your body.
Yeah.
And in a family that has been overcome with cancer and other health illnesses, the last thing I wanted to do was to be medicated for the rest of my life because it may have shortened my lifespan. So they threw me on biologic treatments. They were new to the market. To the point where they weren't covered under insurance. And if I told you the cost of these things, if I could pay 3 mortgages at the same time, I may have stuck on the path that I was currently on, but I couldn't. So I started to seek alternative avenues, and I saw an acupuncturist, and he suggested that I read a book called The Paleo Cure by Chris Kresser.
Okay.
He's a licensed acupuncturist as well and certified nutrition specialist. And that book changed my life. It changed my entire direction. It made me start to not question. It started to give answers to the questions I had regarding food and ingestion and what we were taking into our body. And this was 7 years ago. And I started just a whole food clean diet. I just eliminated anything that causes any bit of inflammation in your body, whether sugar, refined oils, refined fats, any highly processed foods, and I eliminated them entirely. I was basically eating meat and vegetables. And within 7 months of treatment and eating completely clean, I was able to wean myself entirely off of drugs that doctors were telling me I was going to be on indefinitely. I've had one flare-up or 2 flare-ups in the last 7 years, and none of them had needed medical treatment. I've been able to control them with my own diet. And I feel better now at 37 than I did my entire life before. I feel better and better all the time. It's pretty miraculous, the changes it's made.
So I want to just point out 2 quick things to our readers. Number one, vaccinations may have triggered that for them, but man, we are not saying that don't vaccinate, because I can say the craziest things on this podcast, but if I even hint that vaccines are bad, I get so much grief on Twitter and everything else. Yeah. So I just want to make clear.
Yep.
Vaccinate your kids.
I'm not saying it either.
Yeah, we're pro vaccines here. But the other thing I want to talk about is that 7-month period, because I've had, a lot of people that they'll hear about my journey and how long it took me to lose weight, how long it took me to fix my health. I had someone on here a couple months ago talk about golly, I've just blanked on the name, but the things that are in plants that are bad.
Phytate.
Yeah, it's the other one, but oxalates. But and talk about that with her, she said it took like 7 to 9 months to clear all that out of her system. And I had someone on YouTube go, 9 months, that's too long. Well, I mean, 9 months, 7, 9 months, whatever. That's time that's going to pass anyway. I mean, in a year you're going to be a year old. There's nothing you can do about it. But if you can make changes now that will improve your health in a year, I tell you, in a year, you're going to be thankful for it. And so it might take some time. It might take years of fiddling and doing things with your diet to get things down and to get your body settled and healed and whole. So if you're expecting, all your problems to be fixed by going, say, carnivore for 30 days, it might help, but it's probably not going to fix everything.
Definitely not.
And we'll that's an important point. So you've had these flare-ups, or not flare-ups, but you had a few flare-ups, but you had this disease, you're seeing it go into remission. But now you've got this business, Bone In. What is this business, and what is it you're trying to accomplish with it?
So I noticed when I was eating clean for the first, year, that I was sourcing from places that I wasn't familiar with. They were very highly priced, but I trusted what was on the label. I trusted what I was being told. And I just felt myself kind of falling down this, the same rabbit hole in regards to not fully understanding or knowing what I'm ingesting. Now, I felt great, so that was a positive. But I knew I felt great because it was a complete 180 in my diet, from a more of a 75% processed food diet, even eating out at some places, they're using a lot of refined fats and oils, to completely being an in-home cook. Right. And also what happened was, when I saw the amount of money that it costs to eat this way, right. My head turned, and I'm like, first off, I don't have the time. Second off, I don't have the capital now that my medical bills are taking it all. Right. I was doing a lot of nonprofit work, so I wasn't making a lot of money, and I kind of had to abandon it all. So I started just looking into ways to kind of cut these costs, and I started talking to local farmers at farmers markets. And then to kind of help offset some of these costs, I started producing more of the food for me and my family by also offering it to neighbors and friends and colleagues, just like to kind of help us with the cost of these of the food and preparation. Right. So we started just selling stuff from our house, and within a year we were tapped. We couldn't even sell more from the home. People were actually in demand for full transparency in this food. So we had just started relationships with the farmers, and then a lot of hurdles, fast forward over the years. And, the buyers that want the full transparency are also very willing to cook for themselves. And finding a commercial kitchen to prepare foods for a lot of people is not very easy, even in a city environment that's affordable, especially with what our current financial situation was. Our medical and so forth really put me underwater. So we started offering provisions on top of the prepared foods, and the provisions side took off, and it was an easier workload, but I needed to find more farm partners that were growing this way. So we moved from the city and we moved closer to the farms that we currently worked with, and we found an abundance of them in the center of New Jersey, and they're all doing great things. They're all working on regenerative agriculture, and now we're finally finding ourselves into a local commercial kitchen here to start offering prepared foods back to our buyers. So now we'll be back to the provisions and prepared foods. But now we have, 25 relationships with small family farmers who are all doing fantastic things in the area. So it's streamlining now, fresh harvests to preparation to home. No storage, no warehouses. We're basically picking this stuff up, bringing it, cooking it, preparing it, packaging it, delivering it. And logistics have been the hardship of what we've had to do, but we're figuring it out.
So what is your, are you just delivering to the New Jersey area? Are you doing like the tri-state area, or is this something, East Coast, nationwide, worldwide?
For right now, we're sticking as small and local as possible. We're centered in Hunterdon County of New Jersey. And then we're delivering to about a 9-county radius. A majority of our buyers are inner city, Jersey City, Hoboken. We're trying to venture across the Hudson into Manhattan and Brooklyn. We do have some buyers in Brooklyn. It's just, that's a whole other beast logistically. Cost of just crossing the Hudson can really influence costs. And people are still figuring out, that it does take a lot. It does take a lot out of pocket, and it does take a lot of labor to eat properly in the way that we should be all eating. Yeah,
definitely. I'm curious if this isn't kind of the wave of the future, that these small local places that are trying to source, like I have a very nice butcher just up the road from me. And I remember one time I called him and I said, I asked if I could get a grass-fed cow, because his cows are, conventionally raised.
Yeah.
He said, we don't really sell, grass-finished cows because they tend to taste like grass. I was like, what? This is a guy that spent 40 years of his life, cutting meat.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, that is such a strange thing to say, but he just didn't know the difference. He just didn't know the advantages of a grass-fed cow, and frankly didn't want to bother learning. He had a pretty nice business just doing things the way that it had always done, which I thought was really, really strange. Fortunately, there's somebody else in the city that's sourcing grass-fed beef, but it's a very, very small operation. He's basically selling it out of a freezer in his living room, which is kind of that's even a unique experience. Going to somebody's house to buy beef is strange, but it's hard to get. It's hard to source these meats, and it's really unique. I remember having someone. Oh gosh, I can't remember his name. I'm really bad with remembering things. And the sod father, what's his name? The ruminante. I can't even think of what's the name. But anyway, he listening to him talk about how cows are raised, And when he said that, the first 3/4 of a cow's life, they're on grass anyway. So every cow's grass fed, and so when a supermarket, whatever, boasts their grass fed cows, chances are there's still a conventionally raised cow that has been raised in a CAFO for the last 6 months of their life. They're just, it's just marketing speak, that trying to find the grass-fed, grass-finished cows is a different animal entirely, and one that most people don't even know the distinction. They just see grass-fed and think, oh, that's supposed to be better, buy it and go, and they're not really understanding what's happening. So again, people like you're important. I mean, you're doing something that needs to be done. And the idea that you're hand delivering this food is pretty crazy. That's something. But I guess that's what you have to do.
Yeah, that's been the hardest part, is the figuring out the logistics and then the educational part. It's
oh yeah.
I do some nutritional talks. I even go to some high-rise buildings and try to coordinate tastings and educate people on these things, and it always comes down to cost, and it's trying to figure out how to offset some of these costs for the areas that can afford these things, because most people can't afford these things. We just spend our money, and I say this confidently, we spend our money on the wrong things, but we have for a long period of time. I was at fault for it. And when I see now where you can save and where money should be spent, to me, it's hard to picture it the way it was, or the way I used to do it.
Right.
So I think the hardship is that most of these conventional farmers are supplying those that do not have the financial means to pay for these things. And I'll say, living in Jersey City for 10 years, part of that area is so dilapidated, and the income is so minimal that these people are just getting by. And the scariest part is that most of them know that they're eating food they shouldn't be eating. Like, they call it frankenfood. Yeah. Because they just know that it's bad for them. But they said they can't do anything else. Stamps aren't taken here. It's really interesting. And there are a lot of farmers who are doing proper practice, and they're doing it right. And it's taken me years to work with them to figure out how to discount these offerings.
Well, let's talk about that, because that's the part of the business that most intrigues me. How are you finding, how are you finding these farmers, and what is your criteria? Like, what are you asking them? What are you looking at the way that what they're doing on their farms to really make a decision if this is going to be a supplier for you or not?
So our first farmer was in a farmer's market in Jersey City, and I met him when we were vending at a farmer's market, and I worked with a purveyor who brought me some grass-fed, quote unquote, grass-fed beef, and I was selling it, and he comes up and he looks at it, and he goes, "That's not grass-fed beef." Just by looking at it, he goes, "That's no way that is grass-fed beef." And so I went and I visited his farm. Now, this guy's been doing farming for 25, 30 years. And I got to his farm, and he had poultry, he had hogs, he had beef, but the farm was beat up. He was under some power lines. A lot of the pastures were ripped apart, but he had woodlands that he was slowly kind of moving his animals into. So here is a farmer that worked his ass off. The guy works harder than any 60-year-old man I've ever met. And it's a day in and day out, 7 days a week. And he knows it. He's all right with it. He doesn't take vacation. He's a machine. The guy can fix anything too. He's amazing. And I'm there and I'm looking at this and I'm like, you know what? Like, this is great. This is my introduction to like actual what's going on. Now, I studied sustainable agriculture in college. So I was on Cook campus in college, which is the agricultural school, and I saw a lot of what was going on there. And, they raised animals there, and, I got to partake in it. So when I got to his farm, it was good prime season. So everything looked nice. Everything was flourished, but it was wild. Things were everywhere. It was a mess. And when he showed me what his product and how his animals were raised and like what his end product was, I mean, and the way it tasted, it was twofold to what I was selling.
Right.
And what I was selling tasted like what I was used to.
Right.
So fast forward, I'm working with him for a while, helping him with some of his delivery and his provisions. And I started getting hit from social media avenues, because a lot of our marketing was through social media, from farmers in the area who were requesting my services. And then I came down and I met John Lima from Lima Family Farms. And when I pulled up to his property, let me tell you, it was a complete, his 350 acres of just beautiful, well-maintained pastures. Now, the owner of this farm has been in construction for 35 years. He made most of his wealth there. And now he's just trying to live off his land, but provide for his community a better product. So I'm talking, he talks to me and he's like, look, I'd love to be able to help you if you help me. Farmers, especially in this area, I don't know about in other states, but they don't make a lot of money in farmers markets. They don't make enough in the farmers market tier to warrant the amount of work that they put forth to bring, unload, transport, load, bring back. And then if they're vegetable growers, rid, 30% of their crop because the heat, wilted it, right, and they can't sell it anymore. It's not marketable. Most of them are feeding it to their animals anyway. But when I met him, I knew there had to be other farmers. And from that point, I just started doing a lot of research online. And then I met with another one who had reached out to me. But to believe it or not, most of them reached out to me for my services because I think they saw what I was doing. They saw that I was a more affordable alternative to help them move their product to the community. And now it's turned into, 3 or 4 years later, it's turned into beautiful partnerships, and we're all trying to figure out collectively how to grow together and bring more food to the people in our area.
That's exciting. That is really unique. So what would you say the percentage of, say, farmers that are growing meat products versus, farmers that are growing, carrots and vegetables? Are they all doing it all in the same place, or how does that work?
Yeah, so there's a lot of small farmers, younger farmers that are renting land or space from people who have it available. And then they're growing produce, organic vegetables, even sustainable, not labeled organic, but growing it as best as possible without the cost of a certified organic label.
Right.
Because we all know that's expensive, especially for a farmer's income. And they're very intimate. But then I've noticed that we have the very poor farmers who are trying to provide a better product and service to their community, and they can make a living, but that's it. That's all they can do. And then we work with the very wealthy farmers, and the wealthy farmers are practicing the true idea of pastoral rotation, which Joel Salatin of Polyface Farms in Virginia kind of, put a staple on and wrote books about and has done lectures across the country. So they do pastoral rotation. So most of them will, graze animals on a parcel of their land, and then they'll move other animals in to kind of finish off the grazing. And the natural compaction of organic matter from the animals moving, the ripping up of soil aggregate naturally through talons instead of tills, which destroy soil aggregates like on machines and equipment, make the soil naturally fertile for vegetables to thrive. I mean, they're actually getting more yield on their vegetable growth than organic farmers who are spraying with organic pesticides. So it's pretty miraculous. And the thing is, like, the wealthier farmers need to have the income to pay the people to help them to do this, because it's a lot of hands. It's not just equipment. It's a lot of manual labor. It's, people pulling weeds. It's all that stuff is very important to really bring back the health of the soil, which in turn brings back healthier food. Yeah.
So see, again, this is really exciting to me, because I live in Texas, and in Texas we have no shortage of land. We've got massive amounts of land. We've got it everywhere. I mean, everywhere you look is just acres and acres and acres of land. But there's not a ton of the polyface farms, these regenerative agriculture. It's not as big here as it is in Virginia, on the East Coast, in some of these places. And I don't know why it hasn't really taken off here. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just because we're a victim of our own excess that, we don't really have to be super, super smart, stewards of our land because we just have so much of it. It's so cheap. If you go outside the city, if you go outside any particular city, 10 miles outside of Houston or Dallas or whatever, land's cheap. You can buy a ton of it. And, there are ranches here that are bigger than other states. And it's just, there's so many things. This is so big. It's hard to wrap your head around about how big Texas is. I remember one time we went on a trip and we went west to go to San Diego, drove the whole day into the night, never left Texas. It was still Texas when we stopped to sleep for the night. It was just nuts. And I'd lived in Texas all my life, and I didn't really understand how big Texas was until I did that. It's just an insane amount of land. So I'm wondering if that's, if some of the things that are going to have to happen, like environmental changes, like if we struggle with more droughts, things like that, if that's what's going to be some of the impetus behind this movement really coming through. In fact, let me just ask you, because you might have a little bit of insight in this, in your, talking to these other farmers that are doing this, is there anything that seemed to serve as an impetus for them doing this, that got them really excited, to do it as opposed to the more traditional types of farming?
You know what? That's a really good question, because I feel like it's varied amongst each of them for their own personal reasons. Two of the farmers we work with were organic farmers in California, and I think they just enjoy farming and they just wanted to have a different experience. So they came over here to New Jersey. Some of the wealthier farmers, they're learning about the importance of sustainability. They're learning, I think sustainability is probably their number one go-to. They all understand that there's issues within our system, and they know that it takes change, and that change is going to it takes capital to make that change. So I definitely work with one farmer who's all about that. And that's John McConaughey at Doublebrook Farms in Hopewell, New Jersey. This guy is changing all of Hopewell's landscape. It's pretty amazing with this guy. He's got investments in just about everything, but he's partnered with different groups throughout the area. So people are renting land from him to take his grains and start a distillery. Someone else is renting land from him to start a composting facility. Someone else is renting land from him to start a farm-to-table restaurant. And he kind of leases these properties and then runs 1,200 acres of land, growing and raising animals on these lands, heritage breeds, mind you, which most farmers steer away from. They always go to like the more crossbred breeds because they're economically more feasible for them. But he's going full heritage. So he's raising purebred animals. I mean, the guy raised 1,500 turkeys this year, pure heritage breed turkeys. Now, the issues with heritage breed turkeys is their mortality rates are very high. So farmers lose a lot of money, but if you have wealth, that money isn't gonna crash you. So he's definitely all about sustainability. John Lima is all about sustainability. I really think sustainability is probably the driving factor behind all of it. Health is definitely a factor, but they kind of put that more in my vehicle.
Well, let's talk about your vehicle. The fact that you are going into the public and giving these speeches, that's really interesting. And you're the first person that I've talked to that's been doing something similar to this, that's doing that. That's actually going, one-on-one into the public. Tell us, what are you teaching? What are the big points that you're trying to get across to a potential customer?
It depends on how much the customer already knows. Okay. It's depending on their questions. Some ask questions. If someone comes up and says your costs are high, I always turn to so is healthcare. Exactly. That's the first go-to. A lot of people don't think that there's a difference in health between grass-fed beef and conventional beef. They don't know that there's a difference in omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, that certain fats are more rancid and can cause free radicals that can cause cancer. It's like everyone, puts this emphasis on meat causing cancer, but it's processed meat that's causing cancer. And processed meat isn't just bacon and sausage. Processed meat is anything that doesn't take its natural form. And if you're raising cows improperly, while they're ingesting things that are destroying their internal system, causing inflammation in their body, and then you eat that, they're going to cause inflammation in your body. So I think that each customer, it really, really varies. But there's customers that come to me that are super knowledgeable in this stuff. And those are the buyers that have kept me growing. But most lectures when I jump into, that's probably one of the biggest hurdles I have, is figuring out what point to emphasize. Because it's not just sustainability, but it's also your health. And people just can't tell the difference, because it's been ingrained in our lives forever, in our generation forever. And, the last 200, 150 years, since the Industrial Revolution took over agriculture, it's changed immensely. So it's a good question. And truthfully, it really varies upon the amount of information that customer or potential buyer already knows.
Okay. Well, tell me, what does the future hold for Bone In? Like, what are you hoping to accomplish, say, in 5 years or 10 years?
That's another good question. It's we're piecing things together. We're trying to get more food to more people. We essentially want to be a model for other services, other businesses to be able to share with their communities or their towns or their cities. The hardship is trying to convince people that you have to live a very, very frugal lifestyle. Our expenditures are very minimal, both personal and business, because we're fighting a system that has basically set the tone for our entire economy. Right. So it is a struggle, but it's doable. And truthfully, it's a little bit more rewarding. Yeah. It's to know that we always have access to the best, healthiest foods, the pure natural foods, and we kind of just take a presence in life, and we're out in the fields, and we're working with people and community, and it really is a great avenue. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely stressful as hell, but I think everything is in that sense.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about the products that you offer. So you got a customer that comes to you, and did you say you are doing prepared foods now, or is that's a little bit more in the future?
So we do some provisional prepareds, and what that means is like things that people can cook with. So we'll do bone broths. Bone broths are our staples. The name Bone In Food we came up with that name because I learned a lot about the ample benefits of consuming bone broth can have on your body. Also, the sustainable measure. It's using nose to tail philosophy of every animal, making sure if we are going to take the life of that animal, that it's going to be utilized in every way, shape, and form, even if it's being fed back to the soil. And then Bone In is also the name. I'm kind of thinking more primitive in our sense, like without everything being so accessible and convenient, what can we do to bring ourselves back to the way our ancestors were when they just thrived? They thrived naturally because they were outdoors, getting all the sunlight they needed, breathing all the fresh air they needed, and then being active and eating pure foods, pure denatured food, or pure regular foods. So right now it's basically bone broths. It's cooking fats. We use a lot of lard, a lot of tallow, a lot of ghee. We make butter from local grass-fed farmers. We turn those into byproducts that people can cook with. And then now we're going to start getting back into our meals. We used to do fresh meals where we would harvest everything. People would basically pre-order online. We would harvest everything we needed from the farms, bring it to a place, prepare it, and then bring it to them next day. And so they were getting freshly prepared meals. Now it's, we're kind of we're just trying to be, we're noticing, because it's going to take such a long time for the immediate public and masses to become educated on these things, that it's more important to focus on the people who already want these things and know these things, to at least get our business to a good, nice, sustainable platform where then the avenues to educate open up. I can spend more time doing those things than all these other things I'm taking on at the time.
Did you say that you're butchering the animals yourself?
I work with 3 butchers. I've even helped slaughter turkeys. I've helped slaughter a lot of the poultry. Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting.
My wife as well. This thanks, just to give you an idea, for Thanksgiving, between our 2 farmers, we distributed about 60 turkeys. And my wife took part in slaughtering and eviscerating and cleaning, and it was her and 7 others just assisting and taking it, one by one. It was probably one of the most calm experiences. It's very quiet. People are just producing food, making it work. Everyone does their part. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. So just go back to an earlier question. When people are ordering, are they ordering, I want 6 ribeyes and 3 whole turkeys, and is that what can they pick and choose like that? Do you have bunches or packages?
They can pick and choose. We also offer bundles and packages like CSA programs. If they don't want to pick and choose their vegetables and they're okay with whatever in season, they'll just buy a CSA share, and we put together those shares weekly. They can order a couple ribeyes. They can order skirt steaks. They can, if we can procure it, we make it available.
Okay.
And then we also offer the option for prepared foods for and I just recently sent out a survey that you're asking that question. And I said, hey, we're possibly going to get back into prepared foods. How often would people be interested in buying these? And a lot of the answers were occasionally. We would love to be able to supplement our cooking at least, once or twice a week.
Right.
So that's perfect. That's the type of, in order to make sure nothing's gone to waste, in 6 years since we started this, nothing has gone to waste. We have found a home for everything that we've purchased and put out.
Wow.
So that's one of our biggest accomplishments.
Man, this is amazing. So I really, like I said, I'm really interested in this as a different type of getting your food. So again, I'm talking to Ron Mirante of Bone In Foods. So Ron, let's tell my listeners, where can they find out more about your company if they want to order, that kind of thing, and maybe give us a better idea of where they have to live in order to order from you.
Sure. So basically, we're an online marketplace. We have to keep overhead as minimal as possible in order to keep foods as affordable as possible and be competitive with larger retailers and distributors. Even though our product is full transparency, soup to nuts, there's no question we can't answer. That's really the extent of our service, is that full customer service that can answer any question you have about your food. We basically you can order online. We serve a 9-county radius from where we are in Hunterdon County.
Okay.
So I believe that's Mercer, Somerset, Hudson, Union, Essex. I have to look at the map right now. But yeah, we basically serve a 9-county radius. Everything's online. So if you go to our website, www.boneinfood.com, you can see the areas that we service. You can even browse our marketplace and see all the meats and the provisions that we currently offer. Everything's seasonal. So, we only work with farmers with what they can produce locally. We don't import. Everything is being produced in the areas in which we live. So yeah, www.boneinfood.com, boneinfood.com. You can read about our story and how we got here. It's kind of a brief summary of everything you and I just discussed. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Ron, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I'm sure my listeners will look you up online and check out what you're doing. And again, I love these stories. I love people like you that have looked at the problems that we have of getting high quality foods and are working to solve it. So kudos to you, Ron.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here, Aaron.
Thank you very much. All right, guys, we will be right back with a little bit more information.